Jim, 19 years as a player, just short of 500 games, but I'm thinking there's four in particular that stand out for you. Game 1, Euros under-16s, 1998, McDermott Park. You're part of the Republic of Ireland team that beat Italy in the final. Incredible moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amazing. I mean, I'd not long left Ireland and not long signed for Celtic, and I had been part of the under-15 group, and then we'd obviously qualified for the under-16 Euros, and luckily enough for us, it was being held in Scotland, so there wasn't too much travelling for us, and we had a really good travelling support coming over from Ireland. Obviously, lots of family and friends, and the final was actually being played at McDermott Park. Celtic were playing St Johnstone the very next day at Parkhead. Had to win the game to win the league. I think Harold Brattbach scored on the day. So there was a lot of Irish in around Glasgow and Perth on the day before the game anyway. So we had a huge fan base there, and it was a great atmosphere, and by far the biggest game that any of us had ever played in at that point, at 16-year-old. And we were playing against Italy. We were huge underdogs, and we managed to win the game 2-1, I think it was, in the end. We hadn't conceded a goal actually in that whole tournament. In the build-up to the final, we had kept a number of clean sheets against really good opposition, with Spain and Denmark and Finland, and it was just a fantastic start to my professional career. And I think probably as a youngster you kind of take it for granted. You think that this is just the way it's going to be. But it's only now looking back on it like that you remember these moments, and the achievement for that team in particular to be the first ever Irish team to win a major trophy was it was a nice feeling.
Phenomenal. At 16 to win such a major tournament, you were already in Celtic's books at that time. But I'd imagine at that point all you're dreaming of is fame and fortune.
Absolutely.
I've already achieved this at 16. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the problem. I think when you do have some good moments in early on in your career, like I kind of did in terms of this at 16 years old, and I know we'll come on to the Celtic debut and that at 18, but it's you kind of do take it for granted. You really do, and. No, it was a great achievement for the group. We had some really good players in the squad that went on to have fantastic careers.
I think John O'Shea, Andy Reid, Liam Miller.
I mean, John, obviously, Waterford man like myself, played against each other growing up. From a very young age, played for two different teams, and then obviously got drafted into the Irish setup at the same time as well. So we built a great friendship from there on, and still keep in touch. As often as we can, and then like Andy Reid went on and had a great career playing with Nottingham Forest, Tottenham. Liam, as you touched on, God rest him, was a fantastic player for Celtic, and then earned a great move down to Manchester United. Played at Sunderland, obviously done a bit of travelling then towards the end of his career, moving over to Australia. But that group of players were still all very much in contact with each other. We've got a WhatsApp group on the go. Everybody's in it. There's lads still involved in football, there's lads involved in business now, there's guys that went off and done their own thing, but it's still great to still keep in touch, and there's still that banter and all the crack that you can remember from when you were a young kid. Even now when we're in our 40s, you're still having sharing lots of good memories, which is what it's all about.
Liam tragically passed away so young, and how did that impact on you and the rest of the guys at the time?
It was such a shock initially, to hear about the illness, pancreatic cancer he had, and he's such a young, healthy athlete. I think we all just kind of expected him to recover and to get the necessary treatment, and obviously he would the best treatment would have been made available to him, but it's only actually when you start researching the type of cancer that is, the success rate from something so serious is very, very small, and it was quite quickly and quite sudden in the end. So real obviously loss for us as a friendship group, and for a group of players that grew up together. Myself and Liam left Ireland on the same flight, travelled over to Celtic. His mother Bridie, and and his father were in the airport along with my parents. Still, send the odd message to his mum every now and again, around about the anniversary and things like that. She's actually in our group chat, but we've contemplated taking her out of it because of some of the carry on that's in it, and maybe it's not appropriate for a 70-year-old woman to be hearing about. But so she's just a lovely woman, and the family are brilliant, and obviously you're always thinking about the family, his wife and his kids, and really young family. To lose a parent for anybody at that stage is irreplaceable. And went to the funeral over in Ireland, and it was the biggest funeral I'd ever seen. It was like a state funeral. The amount of politicians that were there, the Irish Army, all the dignitaries that you could think of, and obviously the world of football was there as well. Some really high-profile superstars all there to pay their respects to not only a fantastic footballer, but more importantly a great human being.
I was privileged to be able to report on the Champions League games 2003-2004 when they made such a huge impact. Anderlecht and Lyon, and of course a particular game of Sir Alex Ferguson was at Celtic Park. Wonderful player, and what I particularly admired about him, Jim, was that for somebody that was such a profile player in terms of being known, his personality didn't seek the profile. He just wanted to get on with his football.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a really, if you'd met him, you'd think he was kind of shy and, quite introverted, if he didn't know you. But, in amongst his friends and the people that he trusted, he was... he was always at the wind-up with people. He was always at the centre of any carry-on that was going on. Willie McStay and the youth coaches at Celtic would tell you, he was for the watching sometimes. But he just loved football. He was probably, still is, the best athlete that I'd ever worked with, in terms of his fitness levels, the way he looked after himself. And that night you're talking about, when Sir Alex Ferguson came up to the Anderlecht game, the story goes that he was coming up to watch Vincent Kompany, and Liam just had the performance of his life in that particular game, ran the midfield against some really top players, scored I think on the night. And then Sir Alex has went back down to Old Trafford. He's had a conversation with Roy Keane, who's obviously a fellow Corkman to Liam, and I think that was where it all kind of began. And then Sir Alex came back up to watch him again. He was outstanding again in the next game, and obviously they put the bid in. And Liam, Ireland growing up, it's a funny place because we're all supporters of Celtic. That's just the Irish connection with Glasgow Celtic is always there in the Republic, and everybody's got an English team as well. And we never got we didn't have Sky Sports back then, obviously, and you didn't get the BBC Sports scene, so the English match of the day is what you got. So that was the football you saw, and it was Liverpool, it was Arsenal, it was Manchester United. There's so many fans in Ireland of English clubs, but everybody's other club is always Celtic. In the south, definitely. In the north, it's maybe a little bit more divided. But Liam got the dream move that he wanted. As much as he loved his time at Celtic, I think he just felt that the draw of going to work with the greatest manager of all time, one of his heroes in Roy Keane, to share a dressing room with him, I think it was just far too big an attraction for him. And I know it wasn't an easy decision for him, but he felt that was the right one for him at that time.
A fantastic memory for you and the other guys to have shared that final with Liam and been a part of it, and obviously you'll never forget that. And that game was May 98, May 2000. Your one and only appearance for Celtic, but my word, what a momentous game. Henrik Larsson's come back from his broken leg. You're in from the start. I mean, what was going through your mind at that point?
Well, obviously,
18, I think you were
18 years old, and I mean, look, that's why you make the move in the first place, and you make the sacrifices that you have to make in terms of, moving so far away from the family at 15, missing out on family occasions back home. You just hope that those sacrifices are going to be worthwhile, and a minute on the pitch would have been more than enough for me to have justified the decision, but to get on from the start in the last game, now it's worth mentioning that the league was well and truly wrapped up by Rangers at that point. And
you don't devalue your selection here.
Well,
you earned your selection.
I think we need to be honest about it. But Tommy Burns and Kenny Dalglish had obviously taken over the reins from John Barnes. And I think I have so much respect for Kenny Dalglish and as a person and as a player. Particularly when he was at Liverpool, as I said, growing up, in the 80s. My older brother Jerry was Liverpool mad, and it was Liverpool videos on the VHS for fun after school, and so I knew all about Kenny Dalglish. But Tommy Burns had a big influence on the academy at Celtic. He was always in the background, always checking up on us, making sure that we were doing things properly. He was a real disciplinarian, Tommy, but as people who know him, he was a really good laugh as well. He was always up for a bit of crack, and I just think he liked being around the younger players, helping them develop, and hoping that one day some of us would get the opportunity to play in the senior team, and that came around at that time. As I said, the league was over. There was nothing really to lose, in a sense that see how some of us get on, see if we sink or swim, and some of the boys done fantastic and went on and had great careers.
Kenny obviously ultimately picked the team, but are you convinced that I think it was something like 8 or 9 young players, including yourself, that were involved in that particular game against Dundee United, of all teams, of course? But do you think Tommy had a huge influence in yourself and the other lads getting the chance? John Kennedy, Mark Fotheringham.
I think so. Yeah, Tommy was really influential in. Particularly with the Irish ones, in terms of bringing us to the club. He was heavily involved in my decision making because of what he had done with my parents and how comfortable he made them feel about the situation. My mother wasn't really on board with it. She felt it was too soon. She wanted me to stay on at school, doing it another couple of years, and I practically begged my father to make her see sense and not to ruin a good moment. So, eventually she came around reluctantly. I can still remember the image of her crying at the front door as we're pulling away and all that kind of stuff in '96. But it was all worth it. It was a fantastic moment, to have grown up in a small town down the southeast of Ireland, where at that point not many lads I knew had ever had the opportunity to go on trial abroad. I never mind, go and sign for someone, and then to go and play for Celtic. It was just a dream come true.
Is it true that Celtic produced a masterstroke in terms of helping convince your mum that you should come to Glasgow and sign for Celtic?
Well, they did. That's I had other options as a young lad. The whole thing came around by playing for my county, for Waterford, in an Irish competition called the Kennedy Cup, and it's basically an All Ireland, all the teams from all over the country competing to win the Kennedy Cup, and we'd done reasonably well. I think we got knocked out in the semi-final by Dublin, but there was a number of scouts at all of these games, and I had a number of offers after the tournament from teams in England, and obviously the one from Celtic. So Jerry Cassidy is he was a scout for Ireland for a number of years, and Jerry spotted me, and obviously very grateful to Jerry for thinking I had the talent and the ability to make a difference, and that's how it all began. And but as soon as the interest was there from Celtic, my family and friends, they were all adamant that was the place I had to go. We had Leeds and Newcastle and Sunderland and one or two others, but Celtic was the one that we went to. We turned down all the other offers to go on trial. We went to Celtic, and it worked out in the end. I got the 2-year contract offer. But it wouldn't have happened, I don't think, had Celtic not been as good as what they were with my parents. And the story you're talking about is obviously in 1990, growing up, Ireland had a really successful World Cup. Packy Bonner was in the goal. I actually had Packy's purple strip that he wore in that World Cup, and my son James now actually has it, and it's still going all that over 30 years later, because he's not sure whether he wants to be a goalkeeper or an outfielder himself. But anyway, Packy was still is an icon in Ireland, a real hero, and I love meeting him. When I do the odd time he's doing the press for the BBC, and I'll see him around at games, and still to this day a real gentleman. But we turned up at Glasgow Airport on one of the occasions to come over, and Tommy Burns had arranged for Packy to be in the arrivals hall waiting for us. Now, obviously,
Master show.
We were expecting just to come out and get a taxi and head on over to Parkhead, but Packy Bonner was waiting there and brought us out to his fancy car, and my mother was blown away. She loved Packy Bonner. There was two Donegal people that she
Was she speechless?
She was. I think she was a little bit nervous, and my father was trying to play it cool and play it down. But it was it stayed with me, I have to say, as manager now. And I'm thinking, if you were ever trying to pull out all the tricks and try and impress the parents of young people, I think that's certainly a masterstroke from Tommy Burns at the time.
So you start the game 76 minutes, quite impressive, before they decided to hook you. So you couldn't have been that bad, Jim. Couldn't have been that bad.
Well,
I mean, do you remember much about the game? Was it a blur?
I do actually. I remember the build up to it. I remember the couple of days training prior to it. I remember Tommy Burns giving me the heads up to say, look, you're going to be starting at the weekend. Make sure your father knows. And obviously my dad got on a flight and was straight over, and he was in the main stand watching the game. But one of the things I do look back on, and one of the early mistakes that I made in my career, I was centre half at the time, playing for the youth team, and John Kennedy was a couple of years below me. I think John was 16 actually at the time when he made his debut. But I was playing right centre half. John Kennedy was meant to play right back, and we were shaping up and doing a bit of tactical stuff, and John really wasn't comfortable playing in the right back position, and he'd said as much to Tommy, and didn't really understand it, and I stupidly said to Tommy that, look, if he's not comfortable there, I'm a couple of years older, I'll play in the right back position and John can play in his natural centre half. And it was a bit of a mistake on my part, because the game kicked off at Parkhead the next day, and as you said, I came off after 76 minutes with cramp, because I certainly wasn't used to running up and down the side of the full length of a pitch, particularly the size of Parkhead, when I'm used to playing at centre half. But so John Kennedy owes me one, because he had a brilliant game at centre half, and the very next season then he became part of Martin O'Neill's plans, and Martin O'Neill didn't see me as a right back.
All the fuss was obviously over Henrik Larsson. Have you got memories of even training with Henrik in the build up to it, or many kind of moments?
Yeah, I had a really great relationship with Henrik for some reason. I mean, we were injured at the same time at one point, and we were in the gym regularly together. And people have got a perception of Henrik as being a bit dour and standoffish, but I couldn't say anything negative about the man. He was brilliant with me, great at passing on advice. A really, really good, down-to-earth guy. So much so that actually when I left Celtic at 20 and I went down to Stockport, I came back up because my wife is from Glasgow, so we came back up to visit family and friends, and we had a night out in Glasgow one night, and Henrik was at the corner of the bar. My brother-in-law is a big Celtic fan, and he was like, come on, go over and get a picture with Henrik. And I said, look, leave him alone. I said, he's getting harassed as it is. The last thing he needs is for us. And I said, he won't even bloody remember me anyway. So I said, forget about it. Anyway, 5 minutes later, Henrik spotted me at the bar, came over, big hugs, how you doing? How's Stockport? Knew the club I was at.
How did you feel that he recognised you? He did recognise you?
Yeah, he came over, and obviously he came and sat with us then, and my wife and my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law obviously was just in his element. He couldn't believe sitting next to his hero, and Henrik sat with us for a good hour, and we had a couple of drinks, and we couldn't get rid of him by the end of it.
It was just the one Celtic game, but does that one game mean as much to you as anything else you've done in your football life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, it's as I said, growing up in the south of Ireland, following Celtic all your life, between Liverpool and Celtic, they were the videos that we had, they were the jerseys that we all wore, and it's just, as I said, that Irish connection between, obviously Celtic and Ireland, and the history of everything about it. It was just a dream come true moment. Much like most young kids now growing up, boys and girls that want to play football. Everybody dreams about that big game. I remember playing football with my brothers, and it's a cup final somewhere, isn't it? It's either the FA Cup final at Wembley, or it's playing for Ireland, or and to have that become a reality at 18 years old. it was quite surreal. And but I remember it well. I remember it, after the game, going and seeing my father and getting a hug from him, and obviously he's proud.
That's magnificent.
Back to his hotel in Glasgow, we had a couple of pints, and it was fantastic. It was brilliant.
Absolutely superb. That's game 2. Game 3, you're full cap for the Republic of Ireland. You come off the bench for Robbie Keane against Finland in Helsinki.
Mm-hmm.
What a moment that as well.
Yeah, another really fortunate moment for me.
Obviously they wanted to replace like for like, Jim.
Yeah.
That was the manager's thinking, wasn't it?
Well, it was strange to me at the time as well, and I was actually going onto the pitch. I was thinking, scratching my head, thinking, does Mick McCarthy actually know, what position I normally play? But I used to love them Irish trips. I couldn't wait for the letter to come through to Parkhead to say that you'd been chosen in the squad. And it was always a great moment. We used to train at Dublin airport with the first team. You'd always do an 11v11 21s against the first team, and then we'd travel out together on the same plane, stay in the same hotel. Top players within the Irish setup like Robbie Keane and Roy Keane and all these different Irish superstars. And we played a 21s game the night before, and I played particularly well on the night. We'd won the game, we'd kept a clean sheet, I think. Mick McCarthy happened to be at the game, and there were 2 or 3 players short within the first team group due to injuries, and he drafted myself and Graham Barrett and one other, I think, over. But just basically, I met him in the restaurant bit at the hotel. We're having our dinner, and he just came up and said, "Look, you'll be in the squad tomorrow night." And I wasn't sure, whether he was winding me up or not. But anyway, I said, "Thanks very much. That's great. Can't wait." And under no, expectancy of getting on the pitch, I would just have been delighted to get there and get a jersey. And the great thing about the international jerseys is it's got the date and the fixture underneath the crest, and it's a real memento to hang on to. So warming up as you do, and with about maybe 70 minutes on the clock, he said, go and have a run. And I'm like, I might actually get on here. And then he called us in, but then obviously I saw the board going up for Robbie, and I was like, what's happening here? But anyway, he put me on as centre back. He moved things around a little bit within the team, and just a brilliant moment. Really kind of pinch yourself moment. Playing against Finland, Jari Litmanen and Sami Hyypiä were both playing for Finland as well. And obviously both of them were playing for Liverpool, so obviously I tried to get a jersey. I tried to get Litmanen's initially, and he said no, and then I asked Sami Hyypiä's for his, and I managed to get Hyypiä's, and I did offer him mine, and he said you're all right. So I got to keep my match day jersey, and I got Sami Hyypiä's one as well.
So did you mark Litmanen for the rest of that game? Did he remain on?
Yeah, Litmanen was playing in the 10 where he played, and
I take it you never get a kick, John?
No, never, man.
Well, a kick
I never got a kick. I couldn't get near him. But no, these are great things to look back on, and as we said at the beginning of it, for those kind of 3 things to happen in the space of 4 years, 5 years, so early in your career, you do really at that point take it for granted and just assume that that's the way things are going to be.
I think the story of your playing career is quite something, Jim, because then we get to game 4, St Patrick's Day, of all days, 2013, you're captain of St Mirren, League Cup final glory at Hampden against Hearts. Yeah. I mean, tremendous. Given all the other emotional successes you had, then you win your first major trophy. Tell me about that.
I mean, at that stage of my career, I've been fortunate enough down at Scunthorpe in the lower leagues, to have a bit of success with them, and we
League One title.
We won the league and got promoted into the Championship, but only lasted a year in the Championship, and ended up coming straight back down through relegation. But my time at St Mirren was amazing. I loved every moment of it. Met some great people. That's the beautiful thing about football in general. Every dressing room you go into is a little bit different, and you meet different types of characters and different nationalities, and learn different things about different cultures. But you always make 1 or 2 really good friends that become lifelong friends, which is the case of mine. And at St Mirren, no different. Met some really good people. When I go back there now, as manager of Dundee United, but even prior to that, just to watch a game of football, you're still meeting some of those old faces that were really good to me at that time. So Danny Lennon signed me from I came up the road from Huddersfield and signed a short-term contract with Hamilton, and then in the January St Mirren had approached me asking if I would sign for them, and there was a relegation battle between St Mirren and Hamilton at the time, and I left Hamilton, signed for St Mirren, and shortly after that became captain, and obviously the game you're talking about in 2013 was the highlight of my 5 years as a player at St Mirren. At that stage in your career, you're not really anticipating any more great success like that, but when you look back at the team that we had, the players, the young lads that were coming through, the likes of John McGinn and Kenny McLean, we had obviously some really good experience with Gary Teal and Big Stephen Thompson up front, scoring the goals, and there was just not just the day, the route to the final was.
You beat Celtic in the semi-final.
Beat Celtic in the semis, we beat Aberdeen at Pittodrie in the quarter-finals.
You signed Calves.
Yeah.
An amazing impact immediately.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that Danny Lennon doesn't get enough credit for, to be honest with you. His recruitment at that point was really, really good. When I came in to the club, there was a bit of a transition period going on. There was some experienced players that were there that had done well for the club previously, but it was Danny felt it was time for those guys to move on, and he made some difficult decisions with regards to some of those players, but then in the summer signed some really, really good quality players, and I think his recruitment over his time there as manager was excellent. You think of Paul Dummett coming into that cup team on loan from Newcastle, nowhere near the Newcastle's first team at that point, had a successful loan at St Mirren and then went back down to Newcastle and played in the Premier League for a number of years and went on to be club captain for Newcastle. But Gary Teal, Tomo, Craig Sampson in the goal, Kenny McLean, John McGinn, obviously both having huge careers themselves at the moment, still playing, and it was just a great balance within the team. We had good experience, good youth, good energy, and we managed to get the job done.
Whatever happened to Stephen Thompson after that game?
Well, I'm glad to say Tomo is a very good friend of mine now these days.
Only kidding.
When he first came in, I wasn't so sure. I thought me and him were going to bash heads here because
really?
We're the polar opposite in terms of when it comes to preparing for games and training and things like that. Tomo was a little bit loud for my liking. When I want to be in the canteen reading my paper and drinking my coffee and a bit of quiet, and he's pulling the paper out of my hands and ripping it up in front of me and things like that. So I wasn't going to be. I wasn't sure how me and him were going to get along. But I'm delighted to say, over time, we became very good friends. Still keep in touch now. Trying to arrange a game of golf actually in the coming weeks now with the weather getting better. In that debut, actually, when I made my debut for Celtic in 2000, Tomo was on the bench. It's crazy how things pan out. That game was against Dundee United, and here I am now as Dundee United manager. In fact, Maurice Malpass was playing for United as well, and I meet Maurice regularly at Tannadice. So, but Tomo had a brilliant career himself, and Gary Teal similar, had a great career. Those two guys were at the tail end of their careers, coming back up the road from England, and just seeing out their last couple of years at St Mirren. And I can't imagine either of those players would have envisaged the kind of success that we had that year.
Your considered opinion of Stephen as a TV presenter?
I think he does brilliant. I really do, and it's one of the biggest. I mean, if you ask any of the players in that squad at St Mirren, about Tomo and what's he going to go on and do after football, there's not a single person that would have said he would have went into the media because I can remember vividly on a Monday morning coming in, and we'd sit in a room like this at the St Mirren training ground, and we'd all have the newspapers out, we'd drink our coffee, we'd be talking about the football over the weekend, talking about the Super Sunday game, whether it was Liverpool against Manchester United, and he would be calling us all the names under the sun for wasting a Sunday watching football. Why would you watch football on a Sunday? So I don't think any of us expected Tomo then to become the face of Scottish football, but we knew I certainly felt from a really very early on that he was really good as a pundit, spoke well, really intelligent, that you could almost see that Gary Lineker type transfer thing happening, and that's the way it panned out.
Have you ever had cause to phone him in private over anything he's maybe said about your team or made comment on any of your team selections? No, you've taken it all on the chin.
No, not at all. I mean, in fairness to him, when he was pundit, he was still just finishing up at St Mirren, and there'd be the odd occasion where I've maybe done something that I shouldn't have done as a player, and there was always a review by Sports Scene. We always used to say that they were the ones that flagged it up, and then the compliance officer would get involved off the back of Sports Scene. So I always felt that a lot of my suspensions came off the back of those. But I always said to him, look, Tommy, you can't go on there and try and defend me if I've done something stupid. Just tell the truth, give your opinion, and that's what he did. But I've never had any issue with any journalists over the years as a player or as a manager. You guys have got a job to do. You've got to call it as you see it, and if it's the truth, and as long as it's all above board, I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm
glad you've said that, Jim, because you'll also be pleased that I've totted up your yellow card count and your red card count, which I'm sure you'll appreciate. 153 yellows over 19 years and 8 red cards. It's fair to say you were quite a competitive player, Jim, weren't you? You liked to tackle, didn't you?
Pretty pathetic now when you line off those kind of numbers, given I only barely played about 500 games, and that's a yellow card I think every 3.5 games, so it's not something for me to be too proud of, but sitting here as manager now as well, I think
there's a lot of times I think maybe you suffer. I don't think you probably get the benefit of the doubt a lot of the time from referees because of what had gone before. Would that be fair?
I think it is fair, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the referees are only human after all, and
did you ever get told that after you'd retired? By the way, Jim, yeah,
well, I did actually. Yeah, I mean, I went and done the referees course, so there's a bit of info for you. I went and done the referees course. I reached out to John Fleming as I was a player for St Mirren, and all this was happening. I felt that obviously the rules of the game were changing consistently, and I felt that the game was getting a bit softer, and there was more protection for the good players, which is only right, I suppose. But for players like me, it didn't pan out all that well, and I had a certain way of playing. Look, I never ever intentionally went out to hurt any opponent, but I knew what my purpose in the team was. The managers instructed me to make life difficult for the opponent, to get round people, break things up, and give the ball to the good players in our team, and that's what we done. But I did on that course have lots of one-to-one conversations with John Fleming. God rest John, but he was a great guy. I thought he was a brilliant head of referees at the time. He was very fair, and didn't hide away from telling you what he thought. He was very honest in his opinions, but he did say that, look, sometimes your past can obviously go can go some way to some of the decision makings that these referees make. If a player that like, let's say, a Kenny McLean or somebody made a tackle and I made the same tackle, Kenny might not get punished, but I would, because they maybe look at it as if there's a signal of intent there for me. But listen, it's part of the game. I couldn't change it. I wouldn't have had the career that I had if I played the game any differently. I wasn't in the teams for creativity or for goals or for anything else. I was there to be that, do the ugly side of the game.
Jim, I guess you were a solid player, and I think your career record speaks for itself. You don't have the career that you did for being a bad player. You were a competitive player, but I think every good team needs a solid player, a competitive player. It can't all just be about playmaking and flair. I personally think, Jim.
No, I agree with that. And now, like, sitting here as manager now, I recognise that, and that's what I'm saying about Danny Lennon and some of the other good teams that I'd played for in the past. And I think back to Scunthorpe, because we were one of the smallest clubs in the league at the time, competing with the likes of Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday. Southampton were in the league, big budgets in comparison to what we had. But the manager, Brian Laws initially, and then Nigel Adkins, they built a team with good experienced players, with some good youth. We had 2 or 3 match winners in the team, and there was probably 4 or 5 guys like me that just done the ugly side of the game and made life difficult for the opposition. And I think you need to get that balance right. I think the best teams in the world all have it. You look at Real Madrid, or you look at Liverpool, or even watching the PSG game the other night in the Champions League. They've all got somebody in the middle of the park that does that side of the game. Now, less so these days, because you can't really make a tackle anymore with the VAR, and days gone by you would maybe want to leave one on the opponent just to make him sure he knows he's in a game. I don't think you get away with that nowadays. So I'm kind of glad I had the career when I had it, because I'm not so sure I would have survived in this day and age.
In part one of our one-on-one, Jim, I discussed your managerial career. Now, you've played for Ireland youth to full international level. One day, would it be an ambition of yours to possibly manage your country?
Oh, that's the dream, yeah. I've said that so many times, even before I became a manager. That is the pinnacle for me, would be to lead my country. Whether that opportunity comes around or not will all depend on the success I have as a manager at club level. But as a boy growing up, all I ever wanted to do was play for Ireland, and as a manager now, I'm no different. My dream is to one day manage my country. It's obviously a very, very difficult thing to do, because those jobs don't come around very often. Timing is really important. My success at club level is obviously going to be crucial to that. But yeah, that would be a great moment if that could happen.
Uniquely, Jim, 2017, you brought your own playing career to an end. I think at 35, you're player manager at Alloa. Mm-hmm. You took yourself off at half time in a difficult game, shall we say, against Albion Rovers, mm-hmm. and that was you. So, it was a bad result, it was a heavy defeat, but did you come in at half time thinking, that's it, I can't carry on, I need to be taken off?
I made loads of mistakes in that early part of my managerial career at Alloa, and when I'm speaking to players who are wanting to get into coaching, I've spoken to a few in recent years. Conversation with Scott Brown up at Aberdeen. I had a conversation with Charlie Mulgrew here a couple of years ago as well. These guys had all done their badges, and I couldn't recommend going down into the lower leagues enough, because there's obviously not as much scrutiny on you. You don't get as much press. There's no huge crowds. You kind of sometimes get away with those mistakes that you make, and inevitably you're going to make mistakes as a young manager. And I don't think the Alloa thing could have worked out any better for me, in terms of the guy who owned the club, Mr. Mulroney, the people who were already there when I took over, the backroom team that Jack Ross had left, but out with that, the people in the office, the volunteers. It was a great setup, a really professional environment for such a small part-time team in the country. And I made huge mistakes at the beginning. Thought I could still keep playing. I had a conversation with Derek McGregor way back at the beginning, just to get a bit of advice from him, and he recommended not doing the player managing. He tried to do it himself in St Johnstone. He felt it was too much of a distraction. He felt he should just focus on one thing, and he did advise me that if managing is what I want to do, then that's where 100% of my attention should go. But me probably being a bit arrogant and pig-headed, I thought I would not listen to that advice and continue to try and play anyway. And it was a bad decision. I played a few games. We won some games. We lost some games. And obviously that game you're talking about there, Albion Rovers, I think we were 4-2 down at half time, I think. And I took myself off because A, I was having a really poor game as a player, and B, I don't think I could have made the tactical changes that needed to be made while right in the middle of the pitch. I had to be on the sideline to try and make a difference. So that was it. I never made any song and dance about it. Never announced it publicly that that's me. I'm hanging up my boots. I just did it and got on with it, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Jim, I can't thank you enough for the time you've given us to discuss your playing and managerial career. Fantastic stories, and wish you the best for the rest of the season as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.